Welcome to What She Said. I'm your host, Lucy Lucraft, a journalist, blogger and podcaster based in Brighton, and you're listening to Series 4, Episode 11, How I Juggle Work and Motherhood. So this topic came from my amazing Patreon community, as well as a few requests from Instagram too, because I really struggled coming up with an idea for this week. And I have to say, it makes me a little bit nervous. Even the title annoys me a bit because juggling, I hate that word. Before we jump in, I just want to say a big thanks to Alice F88 and Becky O'Cole, who both left 5-star reviews for What She Said this week. Leaving a review makes a big difference to whether the podcast is buried in the iTunes ether or not, so thank you so much. It means a lot. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. So first things first, I don't juggle anything particularly well, so don't use this episode as advice. Definitely, that's my disclaimer, so you can't sue me. But there are a few things that I do to balance out work and life, and it's ever evolving, which is probably the first thing to say, especially if you're a new mum wondering how you'll cope with freelance life. Things with babies change all the time, and just as you get into the swing of things, there's a new challenge that comes along, and don't get me wrong, it's all really good fun, but don't worry about the fact that what was working last month isn't working at all this month. It's not you. It's not you. Okay, so jumping in with a little bit of background here. I was freelancing for a few years before Anais was born. Quite a few years, actually. Maybe 4? I can't remember. Although I was experienced in freelancing and being self-employed. However, I didn't plan for her arrival at all. I didn't squirrel away any cash. I didn't think about when, how, if I'd go back to work. I just sort of decided to wing it, which worked out fine. And I think it was a really good thing. And I was very lucky, very privileged to be able to do that. But this time around, because I'm pregnant, I'm now going into maternity leave thinking, yes, I literally can't wait for maternity leave because I need a break. But also, oh my God, it's such crappy money. And so I've definitely been working my ass off up until this point to squirrel away some money so that I can, not be so broke when it comes to maternity leave. So that's the background on me. Anais goes to nursery and has done since she was probably about 4 or 5 months old, starting off one day a week. In fact, I think it was a day, maybe 2 mornings a week, just to help me ease back into work. So I went back to work fairly quickly, but I was kind of able to do that through keeping in touch days. Because the nature of freelance work is that if an opportunity comes up, you kind of don't necessarily want to say no to it. So I didn't. But then equally, there was no opportunities for a few months after that. So then I just, I was able to flex it, which was great. But yes, let's get into some of the main things that I want to talk about today. I've kind of subcategorized them so that it's not too rambly. Number 1, productivity hacks. The word hack is really annoying on so many levels, but I mean, it's just the best way to describe them. And I actually wrote a blog post all about this fairly recently. But some of the things that I do have just come to me or I've Googled them or whatever. Anyway, the best things are transcribing stuff on my phone. So when she was really little, especially when she was when I was breastfeeding, I would transcribe blog posts into my phone. Pretty much all phones just have all phones have a sort of voice recorder dictator app. And I would just use that. And it would sort of transcribe it, and then I would have just something that I could edit. That was really, really helpful for writing blog posts, to-do lists. And I occasionally still do that now, although because she's older, there's no time that I really want to be sat on my phone I would rather do things a different way, which takes me on to my next hack, which is not really a hack as such. It's just, if you can do this, it's quite beneficial. So I try, and if I really need to, I will work during quiet time. So when she's either watching CBeebies or sat down reading, if I ever have any extended moments, which will never be longer than half an hour, but I will always say, Mummy's just going to do a little bit of work now. You have some quiet time. If you need me, just shout. I sort of feel like I'd rather do that than be surreptitiously on my phone. That's been helpful for me. It felt more boundaried. The other hack is not a hack because it's not something that you can necessarily rely on, but working while your baby naps. Working while your baby naps is... It's one of those things that people who don't have kids think that you can do. Like, why do you pay for childcare? Just work while she naps. I've had that so many times, normally from men. And the reality is that when the baby naps, there's so many other things that you need to do. And also sometimes you just want to sit and watch Netflix or have a cup of tea or, I don't know, do nothing. I've never been a massive one for working while she naps. However, I did start doing it recently when we dropped her nursery hours down, so that she would come home and nap and I would carry on my work. And that worked out really nicely. Because she sleeps through the night and has been for like 18 months now, I don't need the time during the day to nap. Although, ironically, she's now dropped a nap and I'm more pregnant, and so really do need a nap sometimes. So working while your baby naps, I mean, it's really, some people only work while their baby naps. They just completely work around their children and it works for them. It's very personal, so I would never recommend that as a strategy, as it were. Lastly, actually no, second to lastly, not working. I decided when she dropped her nap that instead of trying to work around her naps, I would just not work and just accept it, and accept that I now have 3 hours a day to work as opposed to 6. Yeah. And the thing that's helped me do that is analysing what makes me the most profit and focusing on that. So that's why journalism has dropped way back for me over the past year, is because the kind of pound per hour from my freelance writing is so poor for me that it made more sense to focus on other things. So the next thing I want to say is forgiving myself has been a great tip. I nap if I really need to. I say no to work, as in I'll just decide, okay, I need to do something this afternoon. Technically, I've got it on my to-do list, but perhaps I can push it back to tomorrow and just have a nap and not worry about it. I allow myself time to do nothing, which means, watching Netflix. And although it's been hard in this transition period to going from having 6 hours a day to work to 3, Ollie had to remind me of this because I'd been invited to a kind of brunch yoga businessy event on Monday, and it's 10 to 12 and I have 9 to 12 to work, and I thought, that means I'm missing a whole day of work. And Ollie was like, but you're freelance, you're your own boss, that's the whole point of you being your own boss. Which, yeah, that's right. So, sod it. I'm doing that instead of working, and that's okay. I just have to, find a way to make up the work. I'm my own boss, so it doesn't really matter, does it? Lastly, I couldn't talk about how I juggle work and motherhood without talking about childcare. I honestly couldn't cope without regular childcare. I know that people people do, and I'm privileged because I can afford childcare, but I just couldn't do it. So I don't have help from my own mum, although I do have sporadic childcare from Ollie's amazing parents, but nothing that I could work into a regular thing, because since we moved so much further away from them, and they've both got full-time jobs, I'm very lucky that occasionally they come down, and I normally treat that as not a work day. I treat that as, I'm going to go to the cinema or whatever, do something for me. So when I was thinking about childcare, when Anais was small, I thought about lots of different options, childminders, you can do nanny shares, things like that, but ultimately I settled on nursery. It's always suited us. It's always felt right. Anais has always loved where she's gone, and she really loves her current nursery, and she's just thrives there. I love them too. I suppose the downside is that it's expensive for sure, not that it's overpriced, because I think when you look at what you're getting for your money, it's such good value. But it is a chunky monthly cost that we add in as a family. It doesn't fall on me to pay for that. My husband is very clear on the fact that this is a shared family cost, and we've always made that distinction. I don't calculate my profit and loss against childcare. I budget in half of the childcare, my half of the childcare, which makes it really, really affordable. But it is a chunky monthly cost nonetheless. So I switched her down to shorter days, so that I could capitalise on the fact that she still was having an afternoon nap. And I saved quite a bit of money doing that. But yeah, she dropped her nap a few weeks after I did that. So now I work a full-time job in half the time, which is fun. And I should also say that my husband works most Saturdays as well. So to be completely honest, I really struggle with balance. And usually I come last. So on that note, that's how I juggle. Not well. But at the same time, I'm having another baby. I love my life. I've got such a lovely, lovely life, and I love my job. It's just, if you're listening to this and thinking, oh my goodness, this sounds all doom and gloom, don't. Try and think about it in terms of, I don't know, it's ever evolving. What works for me won't work for you, and vice versa. And you can just try stuff. Nothing has to be forever. And I'm firmly of the belief that happy mum, happy baby. That's kind of how I live my life. I try and put myself first at least some of the time, in terms of, yes, it's not ideal that sometimes I have to work while Anais is having quiet time, but actually then I'm way more present outside of those times. And I think if I was in the times when I've been trying to fit in work wherever I could before I had proper childcare, I think Anais got less of me. I mean, I might just be trying to convince myself here, but but hey, I'm my own boss. I can do what I want. All right, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. The outro is going to come in a bit, asking you to do stuff, probably. Sorry, just skip it. If you have any ideas for future solo episodes, I'm so open to hearing them. I really love recording stuff that you want to hear. I did get quite a few requests to talk about things like sustainable fashion and things in the zero waste realm. And just watch this space, because something will be coming soon along those lines, but not within this podcast. This podcast will always remain about blogging, creativity, life online, that sort of thing. But if you've got anything around those topics, please let me know. Okay, that's it. Have a great week. Thank you so much for listening to the episode. I hope you enjoy it. You can get in touch with me on Twitter or Instagram. I'm at Lucy Lucraft. I'd love you to leave a review for the show if you have time. All of the information that we chatted about in this episode is in the show notes. You can find everything at lucylucraft.com/podcast. See you next week.